I never thought I'd see the day my own son would look at me like I was a burden, especially on Mother's Day. Asterisk, I raised him with my hands, my prayers and my broken dreams. And yet, that day, his words cut through me deeper than any wound life had ever given me. Asterisk, he smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. It was polished, practiced, the kind of smile rich men wear when they've learned to hide their hearts behind money. Asterisk, and then he asked Mom, "Do you like the $5,000 Clara gives you every month?" Asterisk, my name is May, and this is the story of how a mother's love met pride, and how forgiveness became the only way to breathe again. Asterisk, when I was younger, I didn't have much. My late husband and I worked day and night. I cleaned houses, he fixed whatever people needed fixing. We weren't rich, but we were proud. And we had one son, Daniel. Oh, Daniel was the light of our small world. He was curious, bright, and full of dreams that seemed too big for our little town. I remember him sitting by the window, looking out at the world and saying, "Mama, one day I'll buy you a house where you don't have to scrub floors anymore." And he did. Years later, Daniel made something of himself. He studied hard, worked harder, and climbed the kind of ladder that I never even knew existed. When his father passed, Daniel promised me that he would take care of me. He said I'd never have to worry again. Asterisk, at first, he kept that promise. He bought me a little house, sent money, and called every weekend. He'd always end our calls with, "Love you, Mom." But life has a funny way of changing people when comfort replaces struggle. When money starts whispering in your ear, it changes what you hear, and sometimes who you listen to. Asterisk, Daniel married Clara 5 years ago. She was elegant, beautiful, graceful, the kind of woman who looked like she was made for fancy places. I never disliked her. No. I just never felt she saw me as family. Every time I visited, she'd smiled too perfectly, call me Mother May, and hand me an envelope before leaving the room. It always had money inside. "Daniel insists," she'd say. But her eyes said, "Don't stay too long." Asterisk, I told myself not to mind. My son was happy. That's what mattered. Asterisk, but over time, his calls became shorter. His visits became rarer. Birthdays came and went with flowers ordered online. Then came the day that changed it all. Mother's Day. Asterisk, he invited me to dinner at their mansion. My heart was so full that I wore my best dress, the one Daniel bought me years ago. The driver picked me up, and when I arrived, everything sparkled, the chandelier, the polished floors, even the smell of roses. But what I didn't expect was how small I felt in that big, perfect house. Asterisk, Clara greeted me first, wearing a diamond necklace that probably cost more than everything I owned in my lifetime. "Mother May, you look lovely," she said. Her voice was sweet, but cold. Then she turned and said, "Daniel's finishing a call. He'll be right down." Asterisk, we ate together, but it felt more like I was sitting in a business meeting than a family dinner. Clara talked about investments, charity events, luxury brands. Daniel smiled, nodded, barely looking at me. I wanted to ask him how he was. I wanted to tell him about the roses blooming in my little garden. But before I could, Clara said, "Oh, Daniel, did you tell your mother about the transfer?" That's when he looked at me and asked that question I'll never forget. "Mom, do you like the $5,000 Clara gives you every month?" Asterisk, it was quiet after that. I felt my heart tighten in my chest. For a moment, I didn't understand. Then I realized he wasn't really asking if I liked it. He was asking if that money was enough for me to stay quiet, to stay grateful, to not need his time, his presence, his love. I smiled because that's what mothers do when their hearts break. "Oh, Daniel," I said softly, "I don't need Clara's money. I just need my son." Asterisk, Clara shifted in her chair. "May, we just want to make sure you're comfortable. Daniel's very busy. You know how demanding his position is?" Asterisk, I nodded, but my eyes stayed on my son. "Busy doesn't mean gone, my dear. Even the wind finds time to touch the trees." Asterisk, Daniel looked down at his plate. "Mom, it's not like that. You know I care about you, but you need to let me live my life now. You're well taken care of, aren't you?" Something inside me trembled, not from anger, but from sorrow. Yes, Daniel, I whispered. I'm well taken care of. But sometimes, my son, comfort without love feels a lot like loneliness dressed in silk. Asterisk, he didn't reply. The rest of dinner was quiet. I sat there, my food untouched, remembering the boy who once held my hand when we crossed the street. The boy who cried when I sent him to school on rainy days. The boy who promised me a house. Not a hollow one. Asterisk, after dinner, Clara excused herself, leaving me and Daniel in the living room. I took out a small wrapped box from my purse, his favorite childhood photo framed. The one where he was hugging me, covered in mud, smiling from ear to ear. I handed it to him. Happy Mother's Day, Daniel, I said softly. He looked confused. Mom, it's my turn to give you a gift. Asterisk, I smiled. No, son. This is for you. A reminder that before the world gave you gold, I gave you love. Asterisk, he didn't say much after that. Just hugged me quickly, told the driver to take me home, and went back inside. As the car drove away, I stared out the window at the lights of his big house fading into the distance. My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't cry. Not then. Asterisk. When I got home, I made myself some tea and sat by the window. The moonlight fell across the table. I looked at the little vase of wildflowers, the kind Daniel used to pick for me when we had nothing. Back then, he'd run to me saying, Mama, they're not from a store, but they're from my heart. Asterisk. And that night, I finally cried, not because I'd lost him, but because I realized I'd already been losing him for years. Little by little, with every silence, every envelope, every absence that money tried to fill. Asterisk, still, I prayed for him. Because that's what mothers do, even when they're forgotten. We pray that our children find their way back home. Not to our houses, but to their hearts. Asterisk, and, my dear, that was just the beginning of what life was about to teach me. Asterisk, because sometimes it takes being unseen to truly see. Asterisk. The morning after that painful Mother's Day, I woke up with swollen eyes and an aching heart. I tried to start my day as usual, boiled water for tea, opened the curtains, and whispered my morning prayer. But even as I said, "Thank you for another day," my voice trembled. The house was quiet, too quiet. That's the kind of silence that seeps into your bones. Not peaceful, but hollow. I kept thinking about Daniel's eyes that night. Distant, tired, and too full of everything except love. Asterisk, I didn't hear from him for weeks. Not a message, not a call. But every month, right on time, Clara's assistant would send that transfer. I never touched the money. I kept it in a separate account, untouched, because somehow it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a wall built with bills and numbers to keep me out of their perfect world. Asterisk, I spent those days tending to my garden. It's funny, isn't it? The earth has a way of healing what people break. I'd talk to the roses, to the little marigolds that danced in the wind, and I'd remember simpler times. I'd remember how Daniel used to help me plant them, his small hands covered in dirt. Mama, he used to say flowers are like people. They only grow when you care. Asterisk, one morning I found a small boy standing outside my gate. He couldn't have been more than 7. His clothes were messy, his cheeks smudged with dirt. Auntie, can I have some water? He asked. I poured him a glass, and he smiled so wide that it melted something inside me. His name was Samir. His mother worked at the grocery down the road. Sometimes he'd wait outside because she couldn't afford childcare. Asterisk, that day. I gave him some cookies and asked if he liked to draw. His eyes lit up. From then on, he'd come by every few afternoons. We'd sit on the porch, he'd draw, and I'd tell him stories. He'd listen with such wonder that for the first time in months, my house didn't feel empty anymore. Asterisk, it's strange how life sends us people to fill the spaces others leave behind. I didn't realize it then, but that little boy was helping me heal. Asterisk, then one evening, about 2 months later, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, my heart almost stopped. It was Daniel. But not the polished, perfect version of him I'd last seen. His shirt was untucked, his eyes red, his voice low. "Mom," he said, barely above a whisper. "Can I come in?" Asterisk, I didn't know what to say. I just stepped aside. He walked in, looked around, and sat in the chair across from me, the same one his father used to sit in. The silence between us felt heavy. Finally, he spoke. Mom, I think I messed up. Asterisk, I didn't interrupt. I just let him speak. Asterisk, he told me that his marriage was falling apart. That Clara had been seeing someone else. That his work had consumed him, his friends had drifted, and he didn't even recognize himself anymore. I thought I was doing everything right, he said, his voice breaking. I gave you money. I built a home for Clara. I worked myself sick. And now I'm sitting here feeling like I've lost everything that mattered. Asterisk, I reached across the table and took his hand. It was shaking. You haven't lost everything, Daniel, I said softly. You're still here. You're breathing. And you still have love waiting for you if you choose to find it again. Asterisk, he broke down then. My grown son, sobbing like the little boy who used to cry when he scraped his knee. I just held him. All the pain, all the years of distance, they melted in that moment. Because when your child is hurting, the mother in you never asks why. She just loves Asterisk after a while. He looked at me through his tears. Mom, I'm sorry. I thought money could replace presence. I thought comfort could replace care. I forgot what really matters. Asterisk, I smiled through my tears. We all forget sometimes, my son. But love has a way of reminding us, sometimes through loss, sometimes through pain. Asterisk, he stayed with me that night. Made tea, fixed the squeaky kitchen door, even helped me water the garden. I watched him, and for the first time in years, he looked like my boy again. Asterisk, a few days later, I found him sitting on the porch, staring at the flowers. He said quietly, Mom, you were right. Comfort without love is just loneliness dressed in silk. I smiled, repeating his childhood words back to him. And love, my dear, is the only thing that truly grows when you care. Asterisk weeks turned into months, and Daniel started coming more often. He didn't bring money, just himself, his laughter, his time, his stories. And somehow that was worth more than all the checks Clara ever wrote. Asterisk, one day. As we were sitting outside, little Samir ran up to the gate and waved. Hi, Auntie. Hi, Uncle. Daniel smiled, handed him a small sketchbook, and said, For your drawings. Samir's eyes lit up, and he hugged him. Watching them together, I felt something shift inside Daniel, a quiet understanding of the love that money can't buy. Asterisk, months later. Daniel told me he'd sold the big mansion. Too many empty rooms, he said. I bought a small house closer to you, a real home. And when he said those words, I felt something lift from my chest, like years of silence finally let go. Asterisk, time passed. Nay, and Daniel found peace again. Not the kind that comes from wealth, but the kind that blooms from forgiveness. The kind that grows when you stop running from love and start returning to it. Asterisk, and on the next Mother's Day, he came to see me with a simple bouquet of daisies. They reminded me of you, Mom, he said. I smiled. Why? He laughed softly. Because they're simple, but they make everything brighter. Asterisk, he didn't bring an envelope that year. Just flowers, his presence, and his love. And you know what? That was enough. More than enough. Asterisk, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel turned to me and said, Mom, thank you for never giving up on me. Asterisk, I took his hand and said, That's what mothers do, son. We hold on, even when love gets quiet. Because one day, the quiet turns into understanding. Asterisk, he looked down, eyes soft. I wish I'd realized sooner. Asterisk, I smiled gently. You realized when you were meant to. The heart takes its own time to learn. Asterisk, we watched the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the hills. And in that golden silence, I felt peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because love had come home again. Asterisk, so, my dear, if you've ever loved someone who drifted away, remember this, sometimes people lose themselves trying to chase what the world tells them matters. But love, real love, has patience. It waits at the door of the heart until the lost one finds their way back. Asterisk, and when they do, You don't have to remind them of the pain because they'll already know. You just have to open your arms and say, welcome home. Asterisk, in the end. I learned something that I want you to remember, asterisk, sometimes. Losing someone's attention teaches you to love without expectation. Asterisk, and sometimes. Letting go with grace is what brings them back. Asterisk, because, love, my dear. Love doesn't always return in the same form. But when it's real, it never truly leaves. Asterisk.